understanding the Garden of Eden, understanding the trees that were set in the garden, and those things that Yahweh put in front of Adam and Hava. We talked about knowledge, that word da'at. We talked about that opening these doors, right? And allowing now your eyes to perceive so that you can approach the correct mark. And so with that, understanding that we had more than one choice. Why? Because it was the tree of the knowledge of both good and evil, right? Both. So we had choice. And we talked about the eye test, which is seeing with your eye. Remember the part of the word da'at was an ayin, which is when we perceive with our physical eyes. There's two ways to make that sort of sound in Hebrew. You can use an ayin or an aleph. When you use the aleph, you're speaking of the strength of the beginning. You're speaking of Yahweh. But when you use the ayin, you're speaking of being able to see, to witness, to be able to lay eyes on. So this is looking at either you can perceive it and understand it, but sometimes when we get to making our choices, we're not just looking at it to figure out what's what, but we're looking at it to figure out if it's good for me, right? And so it's not just the eye test, but it's also the eye test, right? And so with that, understanding that, our righteousness is what? As a filthy rags. And so we can make choices and it be the wrong choice time and time again, simply because we were born in sin and shaped in iniquity. So what we have is this constant battle with what is the right choice between good and evil. And does evil always look evil? No. Does good always look good? Nope. That's the problem. Herein lies the problem. So then on the second one, we begin by talking about learning, right? The many ways that we learn and we gather information. And one of those, the thing that happens is we learn whether we're intentionally doing it or not. In other words, we are being programmed, right? Everything is programming us. When you are born, you begin to be programmed. Whenever, we have two kids that are now 12 and 8. Oh, she's going to make sure that I get that right. She just turned 8. So, 12 and 8. And I, as well as my wife, we are both in the older groups of cousins within our family. So we have, even though we had children, that are 12 and 8, we've been taking care of kids for a long time, I was always one of, or the oldest in the bunch, so, and it was everything. Take a family vacation. Y'all know what family vacation means? Babysitters built in. And I was always the head of the babysitting department. Why? So I learned how to change diapers real early. Yeah. So when I had kids, it was easy. So one of the things, people come in, we having kids, we doing this, we in the baby. What do you think? Here's one piece of advice I always give them. Look, you got to set their schedule. You don't go according to their schedule. You got to set it. It ain't going to happen overnight. You got to program them. You got to program them. So what do? I would stay up with the baby as late as I could. We had midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, playing around. Lights wide, bright, open TV on. I'm moving around, their head flopping. They like, I want to go to sleep. I want to go to sleep. No, ain't time yet. Why? Because I know you're only going to sleep like 4 hours. But I'm going to pick the 4 hours you sleep. So then when it gets real late, I'm sleepy, you sleepy, lights go off, TV off, everything's quiet, bottle, diaper down. That's how it works. Do that for a little while. Next thing you know, hey, they sleep from 1 to 5. That's not bad. Then it's 12 to 6. We getting somewhere now. Next thing you know, 11 to 7. Oh, shucks. I can get a whole night's sleep. You're doing something. What have you done? Programmed them. So things are constantly programming us, whether we voluntarily take the information in or involuntarily. And so we want to be in a position where we're being programmed by what? By Torah, by Yahweh's word. So where Yahweh says, forgetting not my word.
Yeah.
Right? And so with that, when we do forget, there's a separation that's caused. And he says, what? Your sin has separated you from me. So those plaques and twists build up, and we begin to get this separation in the cells, and next thing you know, there's a breakdown in information. And as brain cells die, as those brain cells die, they don't come back. And they take the information with them. And so this is how then we talked about how even the medical development of Alzheimer's and the dementia, which Alzheimer's is a type of dementia. And so then we went on to part 3, and we talked about what? I want it all back. I'm taking everything that the devil stole back. And that began this process of understanding something. And I stopped and paused, and we went back to understanding more about who the enemy is, what he is, what he can do, what he cannot do. We talked more about that because in understanding this knowledge tree, who was the one that convinced them to eat of this tree? The enemy, Hasatan. Hasatan. And it's confirmed, he says, you, the devil, the one who was in the garden. So even at the end in Revelation, he reminds us of who he's talking about, saying, you go back to the garden, you've been at this game since the garden, trying to convince the people of Elohim to eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And so with that, we understood, went in a little bit more to understanding the lawless one, the thief, the deceiver, the adversary, understanding more about him, his limitations, please. And I like to reiterate this right here. And again, I'm not going to stay in this too long, but understanding more about him. He is not the equal and opposite of Yahweh. He is not the equal and opposite of Yahweh. For so long, people have built him up to be that. He's the evil to God's good. He's the curse to God's blessings. He's the black to Yah's. No, that's not how it works. It's not how it works. He cannot be everywhere at once. Yahweh can. He cannot see the future. Yahweh can.
That's right.
He does not live outside of time. Yahweh does. He's confined. Yahweh is not. And so, no, every time something goes bad in your life, no, it's not the devil, because he wasn't there.
That's right.
He wasn't there. Stop talking to him. Stop praying to him. Stop telling him what he gonna do and what he need to do and what he ain't gonna do. All right? And then understanding what he does operate, which is a very large organization. One that is targeted at tripping up the people of Yahweh. That's his job. That's his everyday, that's his mission. We're pawns. He's not our enemy. He's Yahweh's enemy. But we're Yahweh's heart. And in order to get to Yahweh, he's bothering his heart. He's messing with his heart. So we need to be looking for the systems. We need to be looking for the institutions. We need to be looking for his advertisements. Not him. He don't come in person unless you just that important. That's who he came to. He came to Yeshua. He came to Adam and Hava. He came to Job. Come on. I wouldn't put myself on those levels with those people. So that then lets us know what we should be looking for. And now that we know that, now we can approach this enemy better. Understanding that piece. And so with a part of this, now we're going to go forward into what's really happening. What is really happening? So, what did he steal? Well, now we continue. All right. So one thing we need to understand, if somebody has some stuff and something happens to their stuff, they're trying to figure out who stole my stuff, where is my stuff, and how and when can I get my stuff back, right? So we're going to dive deeper into what did the enemy actually steal. I've heard people say that you should have an inventory of valuables, and some things that you would want to have with that, some type of list or something somewhere in a safe place, a picture of a valuable item, an estimated value, and a serial number. That way, if something happens, then you have some sort of tracking or some way of knowing what you had. And so what do you guys think? What are some reasons that doing this type of inventory might be a good idea? What type of scenarios would make this a good idea? For insurance. If somebody steals something, you can actually report it. To be able to complete a police report. You can give a description of the item because you have it right there. If they find your stuff in somebody's possession, what can they do? They can return it to you now because they have proof that it's yours, right? It could be, something happened and there was a fire or something like that. Having these items would help you to understand what it is that you had so that, again, if you're making an insurance claim, you can say, look, this is what I had. This is what it was worth, and this is the value, and then they can reimburse you for the loss. So these are things that would help. Here's something very basic in just understanding what you have. Understanding what you have, and that might just come from my profession, what I do, but you'd be surprised, maybe you wouldn't be, but you'd be surprised that people in general don't know a whole lot about what they have. I have to really prepare people before meeting with me, because for a long time, I'd wait, and they'd get there, and I start asking questions, and they like, I don't know. Well, how much you got over here? I don't know. Well, what you got at work? I don't know. Well, do you have any? I don't know. So, but people, don't in general keep this laundry list in their head of the stuff that they have. So if somebody comes in and starts taking, how can you be sure that you're going to get back what you actually had? Y'all see where I'm going? If you never knew what you had to begin with, how can you take back what you had? So it's important to know what you lost. But that means you got to know what you possessed. Before you go back trying to reclaim what the devil stole, you got to first know what it is that you possessed. It's also important to actually appreciate its value. If you don't appreciate something's value and someone takes it, breaks it, messes over it, you lose it, you know, how many of y'all, especially y'all with kids, how many of y'all have been to a fast food joint where they give the kids a toy? Lots of times. Them toys are worth like 2 cents. To us, we like, there's another toy. It's probably in the floorboard of the car. It's gonna disappear. Not mysteriously either. But every now and then, kid come and say, hey, I had one of those. What happened? What happened to my thing where you turn it like this and it walks? I don't know. Maybe it walked away. I don't know. It walked away. That's what happened. It walked out of my car and it walked into the trash can. That's exactly what happened to it. But if you don't appreciate its value, you're not going to take care of it, number one. And if something happened to it, you're not going to go searching for it. Right. So now, couple that with the fact that, you know, so-and-so made straight A's and you bought them $100 so-and-so, and now they can't find it. They're like, what? Well, you can't, what? You better find it. Either that or you owe me $100. I become what they call an Indian giver. I don't know why they say. I don't even know if that's culturally acceptable. It's not. Oh man, that's kind of true. What I would say is I become one who repossesses his gifts when my gifts get lost and stolen and broken and stuff like that. Now you owe me. Yeah, at least my kids. You owe me. If you done lost something I paid $100 for, I'm mad. But that's why. Because I appreciate its value. You might not appreciate its value, but I appreciate its value because I paid for it. Because I worked for it. Right? The other thing is, you at least got to know where to start looking. And that's just the bare minimum. Now, for all the married couples, when your spouse call from way to the other side of the house, saying, "You see my phone? Where did you put it last?" That's where it is still. Because unlike the McDonald's toys, it don't have a wind up in the back and it don't walk. Why am I looking for your phone? You got to at least tell me where to start. Was you in the house when you last had it? Can we start there? Because if you don't know where you was and you done been a million places today, we got a problem. We got to at least know where to start looking. Right. Give me a heads up. Were you downstairs? Okay. Now we can begin looking. But of course my wife's not gonna look for her phone. She's just gonna say, "Can you call my phone?" That's what she'd say from the other side of the house. "Can you call my phone?" No. Can't call your phone. I don't got your phone number. No. So at least knowing where to start looking, right? So let's think about this thing. Some things don't disappear because somebody stole it, or because the house burned down, or because, you know, somebody broke it. Some stuff disappeared because you gave it away.
Right.
Items are not always taken. Sometimes, if we're honest with ourselves, we decided that there was something else that we wanted more.
Yeah.
So the question is, did you give it away in exchange for something? That's what a sale is. Did you give it away in exchange for something? Next question would be, was it worth it? What you got back, was it worth it? We always want to blame the devil, but did you give it away? Did you put it on sale? And then the next question is, if it is not beyond redemption, who will redeem it? Are you in the position where you can redeem it? All of these are things that we understand, and I know your wheels are beginning to turn because you know Torah. And you're beginning to think about this in the Torah aspect. And so I want to now begin to tie this together. I got a secret for y'all. The enemy doesn't keep Torah. Did y'all know that? So when the devil steals stuff, he don't care. Shh, don't tell nobody. He don't care about the right of redemption. And guess what? He hopes you don't either. He hopes that you don't understand Torah, so you don't know how to redeem what's yours. Because what does it take when you are not powerful enough? Whose enemy is he? Who do we say?
Yahweh.
He's Yahweh's enemy. Okay, please understand that. He's Yahweh's enemy, right? If you don't understand your rights, then you're easy. He can deal, that's easy. You don't even understand what to do. Why? Because what happens when you are not strong enough or you don't have enough resources to redeem your own stuff? And we're going to go through the scriptures that talk more about it, but y'all know this. So what happens? What do? If you don't have what's required to redeem, what do? What's next? There you go. You have a kinsman redeemer. You can't get your stuff back. You're a kinsman. You get a kinsman who is in position to do so. So, before we go on to the next part, so with that said, and with all that we've just talked about, if you're not in position and you don't know your rights, what are you not doing? You're not going to your kinsman to say, hey, I can't get my stuff back from the devil because he don't keep Torah. And he's not going according to Torah. Y'all, we're only supposed to be enslaved for 7 years if you owe something. And if you still owe maybe 50 at most, man, we still paying prices. Why? Because now the one who needs redemption is not even understanding his and her right to go to the kinsman. Who's the kinsman that has the resources to regain what the enemy has stolen from you? Who? Yeshua. Yeshua is the kinsman, and now you have the right to go to him and say, I need you to redeem my stuff. Can't do it on my own. I can't accomplish it. I can't do it. I don't have the resources. I need you. So what is a kinsman redeemer? H1350. The word is Ga'al. Y'all say that. Ga'al. And it means to redeem, to act as a kinsman redeemer, to avenge, to revenge, to ransom. Do the part of a kinsman. Do the part. What is the part of a kinsman? We just talked about it. It is to stand in place of the person who can't and doesn't have the resources to redeem on their own. We know about the avenge, right? The avenger of blood. What is that? That is a loved one has been killed, and whether that is by accident or on purpose, we're not quite sure yet. So if we're not sure yet, now what comes? It's a trial. That redeemer or that avenger is held off until the trial goes through. And once that trial goes through, now the avenger of blood is told, A, they did it on purpose, have at them. Avenge the blood of your loss. Or, it was not done on purpose, this was an accident, and you cannot retaliate. And so there's a law that's established. There is governance that is established. So we have to understand how that works. So now let's go into the scripture. Let's go to Vayikra. Can somebody bring my scripture? I usually put them in here, but I did not this time. Vayikra chapter 25, Leviticus 25. And understanding he needs someone to redeem it. Either he himself or a kinsman. Notice how all of this is circled around what? Sabbath. Why? Why is this circling around the Sabbath? Because what did Yahweh do on the Sabbath? He said, on the Sabbath, you are released from this curse. You are released. He reverses the curse. And so Sabbath is this focal point of all things release, of all things redeemed, of all things restored. The Sabbath is at the heart of that. And he begins to go into more. If we go to verse 26, and it says, and when the man has no one to redeem it, but he himself becomes able to redeem it, then let him count the years since its sale and return the remainder to the man to whom he sold it, that he shall return to his possession. That means he can take back what it is that formerly belonged to him. This is the right way of understanding this. There was a process. There's a process. And so it goes on, and it begins to now talk about how this applies to the Levites, in what place you can redeem and can't redeem. This is also talking about how to handle those who borrow. It says you cannot mistreat your brother who has borrowed from you. You cannot make him a slave, but a servant. You treat him with respect. And so it goes on from there. But now let's now look a little deeper into this. Because as we begin to think through now, how can we really deal with what was taken? We've talked about now how it all ties together, how the enemy came in and gave them false information to get them away from Yahweh. Now, so many years later, So many years later, people are trying to take all kind of stuff back from the devil, right? What is it that we're really missing? All in all, our identity. That's what the enemy stole. That's what everybody should be running, trying to take back. Our identity. Yeah. What makes up your identity? These are the things that make up our identity that were taken. Culture. Culture was taken. Sabbaths taken. And I don't just mean the seventh-day Sabbath. I mean the Sabbaths were taken. The feast days taken. Language taken. Generations taken. Land taken. Freedom taken. These are the things we need to be going after. How? It's all wrapped up in one simple concept. And it goes all the way back to the garden. What did Satan take first? Their obedience to Yahweh. Because he said, do not eat of that tree. They did. Thus, the snowball effect. But if we understand all of this is wrapped up in obedience, Torah, Yahweh's teaching and instructions to his people creates our culture. It creates our Sabbath. It creates our language. It keeps and saves and continues our generations. It restores and redeems our land. And it gives us back our freedom. That's why James called it the law of freedom. We've allowed the enemy to come in and tell the people who are wanting to serve God that the law is bondage. And so when they say the law is bondage, what comes next? I can take your culture. Why? Because, well, the law say you're supposed to do that. But that's Old Testament. You don't have to do that. I'll take your Sabbaths. Why? Sabbath is Old Testament. Here's why we do Sunday. All the reasons why you do it doesn't overturn the one thing that he told us to do, which was be obedient. Be obedient. That's it. Because when you regain, when we take back our identity, then we're guided, shielded, protected, engulfed by Torah. It begins to produce everything else. A product of Torah is what you begin to look like. That's what we should look like. I'd feel some kind of way if somebody came up to my son and say, boy, you don't look nothing like your daddy. I would feel some kind of way. Yehoshua 22, Joshua 22, 10 through 25. Ain't no way. Can't be ashamed. You know that old song, we are not ashamed of the gospel of Yeshua Messiah. Never did that ring so true. We're not ashamed Yeshua would recognize us if he came. He would recognize us. Think about that. He would recognize. He would be like, oh, yeah, that's my people.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
But what happens if Yeshua walks into a church, the biggest church in the country, on Sunday morning? First of all, they'd be like, oh, wait a minute. Who let that guy in? And what if he took the stage and began to talk, begin to teach? And he's talking about keeping Torah, and he's talking about the Sabbath, and he's talking. Y'all know they kick Yeshua out that church so fast his head still be spinning on the way out the door. Kick him out. That's what happens when you escort Torah out of the church. You escort Torah out of the church. Yeshua is the living Torah. Let's take a look here. Yehoshua 22, 10 through 25. And I want you to understand something as we're reading through this. I want you to understand this whole concept of taking back. This whole concept of understanding the trickery of the enemy. This whole concept of what did he take? What did he take? Well, if he took your identity, that's the biggest thing that most people struggle with. And that question is, do I belong? That question is, am I supposed to do the feast days? Am I supposed to keep the Sabbath? Am I supposed to eat clean? Am I supposed to, do I belong? It's the biggest question. And it's all based on this principle we're about to read. And I'd like to read through the whole thing, but I don't want to go over the time. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to read the beginning so that we get context, and then we're going to skip down to what's happening, where I want you to see how it relates to the struggle that we're going through with identity and do I belong. Understanding first in Deuteronomy 22, I said Deuteronomy, Yehoshua 22, land, Moshe has passed already. Land has already been promised to different ones. And at this point now, they are actually going into the land. So Yehoshua is now giving land to the people as Moshe established. And we know particularly that there were 2.5 tribes who received their promise on the west side of the Jordan. They received their promise. So let's read there just for context, understand where we're at. So let's go to Yehoshua 22 and 10, and it reads, and they came to the districts of the Jordan, which is in the land of Canaan, and the children of Reuben and the children of Gad and half the tribe of Manasseh built a slaughter place there by the Jordan, a great conspicuous slaughter place. Now, this represents a problem. And here's why. This is not the place where Yahweh has placed his name. This was the land that they liked and they wanted. So if you go back to the beginning of the chapter, you'll see that they were given some land outside of the land that everyone else would be in. And so for them to build an altar was to say, here is where we will worship. Now, understand the stuff that they had already gone through. Y'all remember Balaam and Balak? That introduced a lot. It introduced a lot. They were getting through, digging through, shuffling through all this pagan idolatry and all of this stuff from Egypt. And now Balaam goes and gives the secrets to Balak to get them right back in that mess. And what is it? Introducing false gods. How? bring in your women to marry their men. Introduce your culture. Introduce your way of life. Introduce your gods. Introduce your way of worship. Why? Because slowly, what is the enemy doing? Systematically stealing. Taking culture. Taking the things that make them set apart to Yahweh. He's stripping, slowly stripping. And so for them to stand up and say, we will build an altar here, they're like, no. So what you read later on, let's skip down a little bit, 12, and it says, and when the children of Israel heard, all the congregation of the children of Israel assembled at Shiloh to go to fight against them. They said, we won't tolerate it. Yahweh has killed all of our fathers, all of our parents, dead, everybody over 20, dead. And so here we have a problem. Y'all are trying to go back into the thing that got our parents in trouble. So they sent Phinehas. In 13 it says, so the children of Israel sent Phinehas, son of Eleazar, the priest, to the children of Reuben and the children of Gad, and to the half tribe of Manasseh, into the land of Gilad. And 10 rulers with him, one ruler each from the chief house of every tribe of Israel. And each one was the head of the house of his father among the divisions of Israel. And they came to the children of Reuben and the children of Gad and to the half tribe of Manasseh of the land of Gilad, and spoke with them, saying, thus says all the congregation of Yahweh, what is this trespass you have committed against the Elohim of Israel, to turn away this day from following Yahweh, and that you have built for yourselves a slaughter place to rebel against Yahweh this day? You've built for yourselves. You have built for yourselves a slaughter place. They were not having it. And if you read down through there, you'll see that Phinehas gave them the business. He took them back through the history. He took them back through what happened with other people who revolted against. He took them back through plagues that came through. Because he's like, listen, you don't understand what's happening here. And so let's skip down. Let's skip down. Go to 23. No, 22. Elohim Yahweh. Elohim Yahweh. He knows, and let Israel itself know, if this has been in rebellion or if in trespass against Yahweh. Do not save us this day. In other words, they're saying what we're going to tell you is absolutely true. 23. If we have built ourselves a slaughter place to turn from following Yahweh, or if to offer ascending offerings or grain offerings on it, or if to make slaughterings of peace offerings on it, let Yahweh himself require it. But truly from fear, for a reason we did this, saying, listen y'all, 24, in time to come your sons might speak to our sons, saying, what have you to do with Yahweh Elohim of Israel? For Yahweh has made the Yarden a border between you and us. You children of Reuben and children of Gad, you have no portion with Yahweh. So your sons would make our sons stop fearing Yahweh. How long have we been convinced that, hey, you do not belong? You have no inheritance. You are just a good little Gentile.
That's what
The church, literally, boast in being Gentiles. We are not without the promise. We are not without redemption. We do belong. Why did they build that altar? They built that altar knowing that in the future, your sons are going to try to tell my sons that they are not a part of Israel.
Right.
Why? Because you're on the west of Jordan. Guess y'all, where we at? We way west of Jordan.
We sure.
And still being told, y'all are not Israel. Y'all don't belong. Redemption is not for you. You're Gentiles. Be as Gentiles. You don't have to say Yahweh. You don't have to use Hebrew words, and you don't need to understand the scriptures for what they're really saying. You don't have to do all of that. Just be good. They got lists going around as what makes a Christian. And it's the same list that I would want for any person, I don't care what religion they are. Be kind. Who don't you want to be kind? I don't care what your religion is. Don't be mean. You ain't got no reason to be mean. You know, be positive and all of this stuff that don't equate to nothing beyond be a good person. But did Yahweh require for us to simply be good people? No. We are more than good people. We are identifiably His people.
Right.
When you do things that identify you, now I can connect you. Ain't too far me and my Father can go without somebody saying, yeah, yo. I mean, their first guess is brothers, but then their second guess is, oh, father, son, okay. Why? I look like him. I'm supposed to. If I'm a product of him, I'm supposed to look like him. If we're a product of Yahweh, we're supposed to look like him. If we're a product of Yeshua, we're supposed to look like him. Understand that. Please understand that. And so they were afraid. They were afraid that their children would not know who they were, and that their children would be convinced by someone else that they are not His people. So now let's take a step back. What did they do preemptively? They said, we are going to build an altar. And what they said is, we're not going to offer sacrifices on it. We're not going to offer incense on it. All we want is proof positive that you cannot say there is no possible way they could have done this if they were not attached to us. And this is why, slowly but surely, people are starting to see. They're starting to read scripture. Somebody done stumbled over Deuteronomy 28.
Right.
And they're starting to see and understand, oh, okay, wait a minute. Wait a minute, maybe. You know, a whole lot of people pulled out of Africa. Sent a whole lot of places over the world. It ain't just the people here in America. They were sent all over. South America got the most. What were they doing? Dispersing the people of Yahweh. Being sold into slavery. Why? We gave up some stuff, y'all. Our parents gave up some stuff. And now what we read in Joshua is happening. But guess what? There's an altar. It's here. Still serves as a witness. There's still something inside of us that tells us that something ain't right. Before any of y'all step foot into this walk, how many of you said that? Something ain't right. Yeah. Yeah. Everybody said that.
Yeah.
Something ain't right. Nah. Pastor couldn't explain it. Elders couldn't explain it. And the reason y'all here and the ones that you were sitting next to are not here is because you kept searching and you figured out this ain't my identity. It blows people away when they are you a Christian? No. You are not a Christian? No, I'm not a Christian. And then they start trying to figure you out. Why? Because you look just like them. That's why. You look just like them. Christian means to be Christ-like. And you about the most Christ-like thing they done seen. You keep the Sabbath, you eat clean, you do all this, you do that. And you're not a Christian? No, just look the definition up. Look the definition up. That's not me. Don't do anything Christians do. Christians don't do anything that I do. What am I? I'm a follower of Messiah. I'm a disciple of the Most High. I keep his Torah and commandments. Why? Because I belong to him. And I won't allow you to tell me that I don't. So let's take a look in Exodus, because we need to be redeemed. The stuff that we lost, we talked about that. But how do we get it back? Do we wait for the Shemitah? Has there been a Shemitah in the last 400 years? Has there been a Julie?
Yes.
Why are we still struggling?
Yes.
Why is the church still trying to figure out how is it that, and this is not church bashing, but the truth is you can go into any church on any given Sunday and you're not lost.
Right.
Why? Because it's the same warm-hearted, good messages that translate to any facet of life. That's not how Yahweh's Torah works. Does it translate? Yes. But it changes life. It creates the environment. It tells you what your culture is. You don't tell it. It's not this to fit me. I've gone to a gazillion sales meetings where I hear motivational speakers just as good as any pastor's message. And it motivates me just as much as any good word about being faithful or being prayerful or being hopeful or being kind or loving God. Or all of these are great things. But Yahweh requires more. We got to be redeemed. Shemot, Exodus, chapter 15, verse 11 through 8. And I'm going to read quickly because we'll go ahead and finish up. 11 through 18. Who is like you? Oh, Yahweh. Let me tell you where this is coming from. This is the children of Israel. They're coming out. And this is the song that they begin to sing. Moshe and the children of Israel begin to sing this song when they're coming out. And you'll know later on this is when Miriam grabs her tambourine and begins to sing this. The horse and the rider have been thrown into the sea. So this is their coming out of the other side of the Sea of Reeds. So 11. Who is like you, O Yahweh, among the mighty ones? Who is like you, great and set apartness, awesome in praises, working wonders? You stretched out your right hand. The earth swallowed them. In your loving commitment, you led the people whom you have redeemed. In your strength, you guided them to your set-apart dwelling. Peoples heard, they trembled. Anguish gripped the inhabitants of Philistia. Then the chiefs of Edom were troubled. The mighty men of Moab, trembling grips them. All the inhabitants of Canaan melted. Fear and dread fell on them. By the greatness of your arm, they are as silent as a stone. Until your people pass over, O Yahweh, until the people whom you have bought pass over. You bring them in and plant them in the mountain of your inheritance, in the place, O Yahweh, which you have made for your own dwelling, the set apart place, O Yahweh, which your hands have prepared. Yahweh reigns forever and ever. Now let's run to Lamentations. Lamentations 3:58. Lamentations 3:58. And this is what we're looking for right here. Lamentations 3:58. This is what we're looking for. Can we read that together? This is what we're looking for. Lamentations 3:8. O Yahweh, you did plead the case for my being. You have redeemed my life. We need that kinsman redeemer so we can get our life back. That's what we need back from the enemy. We need our life back. We need our culture. We need our language. We need our Shabbats. We need the promises that he has made to his people. It's not in four walls. It's in a people. It's in a people. Amen.
I've been captured by a love I can't explain. And now you have me, and I'm forever changed.